Hey, do you want to learn 7 simple cinematic moves with your Inky Falcon Plus gimbal? Well, stay tuned because that's exactly what we're going to learn about in this video. Hello guys, and welcome to a new video. Now if you've been following my channel so far, you may have already seen the video where I explain the gimbal modes on the Inky Falcon Plus. So if you haven't yet seen it, then I suggest you follow the link and actually watch that video first because it's going to help. Now what we're going to do in this video is go a step further forward and actually learn how to apply the gimbal modes to do some cinematic moves. There's one thing to actually learn how to do the modes, but completely different to actually apply them in real life. So what we're going to do is we're going to split the actual moves into 2 separate videos. This video is going to be the first one where we're going to learn some simple cinematic moves, and then I'm going to do a follow-on video, if this one's popular, to take those simple moves as building blocks and then actually build up to some more advanced epic moves with the gimbal, and that's going to be a whole load of fun, so stay tuned for that. Alright, just before we get started, what I suggest you do is actually put the GoPro into 4K mode and 50 frames per second. And the reason why we're going to do that is that we can then slow down the footage in post to maybe 25 frames, and that's going to help smooth out the video. Also, I suggest you put the sharpness at medium rather than high or low. I also would suggest that you have the hypersmooth switched off because we're going to let the gimbal do all the work. Alright, so the very first move is called the dolly or the slide, and it's very easy to do with the gimbal. What we want to do is set the gimbal into HL mode for horizontal lock, and what that's going to do is going to prevent the gimbal from moving up or down, and you want that because we are moving in a horizontal plane, so by switching off the tilt motion it's not going to accidentally move up or down. So to perform the dolly mode, you just want to take the gimbal and simply just move it to the left or to the right, nice and slowly, nice and smoothly, like this. And another way of doing it is simply just to hold the gimbal like so, and you can just tilt it in one of the directions, and we can then tilt it back the other direction. So we're moving, actually sliding left or sliding right, but we're actually just tilting the gimbal in this direction like so. And the other way of doing the dolly shot, rather than using the horizontal lock, is to use the full gimbal lock, which you can do by pressing down the trigger like so, and then the 4 lights are going to illuminate, and then the gimbal is going to be locked in a certain position and all the axes are not going to move. And if you then move it to the left or to the right, it's going to prevent any accidental panning motions or tilting actions or anything like that. So this is one of my favourite modes to use when I'm doing the dolly shot. So once again, if you want to do a dolly motion, you can use the 2 modes, either horizontal lock or preferably full lock. Right, let's now have a look at some example footage of the dolly shot in action. So the dolly or the slide can be used as a way of establishing a scene, for example. An even better way of using the dolly shot is to actually come out from behind an object and do a revealing shot. So for example, here we are using a tree, and we can then come out from behind the tree and actually reveal the object behind, in this case the abbey here. You can also do the same thing, for example, behind a wall or maybe behind a rock, and it's going to gradually reveal the scene, and it looks very nice and cinematic. Okay, so let's now move on to the next move, which is the actual crane move. So actually simulating a crane lifting the camera up in a vertical direction. Now once again, the best mode for doing this, I think, is the gimbal lock mode once again, because we don't want the camera to actually move in any direction at all. We simply wanted to keep it nice and steady, and then we can just move it up or down. So once again, we're going to just press the trigger on the back of the actual gimbal like so. The 4 lights are going to illuminate. We are now in gimbal lock mode, and then we can just simply move the gimbal up or down to simulate a crane action. We don't want the gimbal to move in any direction at all. Now once again, if you want to do a little bit more advanced, what you can do is you can simulate a torch mode, and then we're going to bring the gimbal up to a vertical position like this. So once again, holding the trigger in, I'm going to do it in reverse this time. So I'm going to just tilt the actual gimbal down, starting to go into a torch position, so which by torch I mean a horizontal position, and you can see that the actual camera is still remaining nice and level as I go down, and I can just bring it back up again like so to do a reverse crane or a vertical crane upwards into a vertical position. That's a more advanced way of doing it. If you want to keep it nice and easy, just simply bring the gimbal down in a vertical position like so. Okay, so let's now have a look at some examples of the crane move. So this crane move can be particularly useful once again for slowly revealing a location. So you can start off, for example, with something in the foreground like this wall here, and then you can just rise up and actually reveal the scene behind. So I particularly like to use the crane mode for stuff like this. Once again, you can actually do it in reverse. For example, you can do a crane mode and you actually can start off by revealing something of interest down the bottom. A more advanced version of the dolly or slide I call the shuffle, and this is where we take the actual gimbal, hold it actually in a vertical position, and then we're going to move to the left or to the right, but we're actually this time, rather than standing still, we're actually going to physically walk or maybe even run in a certain direction. And when you do this, you get a very epic, nice cinematic shot showing, for example, a building in all its glory. Okay, so the next move is the pan move. Now we can do this left or right, or we can actually do a variation of this, which is called the tilt up or down. So to do this, simply just hold the gimbal in a vertical position and just simply put it in PF mode for pan follow, and then you can just rotate the gimbal very slowly in left or right direction, like so. And then the gimbal is just going to follow your motion, and it's just going to just rotate to the left or to the right, nice and easy. So when is the pan motion actually useful? Well, it's quite useful if, for example, you want to reveal a very large building or a very large scene. Now, I wouldn't get overexcited when I'm doing a pan shot. I find they can look a little bit tiresome if overdone. So you want to make sure that you do the pan nice and slowly, and also not over too much of a distance. And the reason why is you can then suffer a bit from the rolling shutter syndrome, or a little what I call jitter, is if you move too fast and you've got your frame rate set too low, then it can look a little bit stuttery. So I would just keep the panning nice and steady and don't actually move too far. Now, one thing to actually bear in mind is when you're doing a pan action, always try and reveal something of interest. Don't, for example, start off in one direction, just randomly go in left or right, because what is the point of the pan? The whole point of the pan is actually to reveal something of interest. So you're going to put the object of interest at the end of the pan. So for example, here I'm going to show you what a pan would look like. So we're starting off looking at the forest, and then we're then going to reveal the actual building behind at the end of the pan. So here's an example of a pan where it's not particularly interesting because we're not actually revealing anything of interest here. We're starting off with a building and then we're just actually revealing a not particularly interesting part of the building. Okay, so let's now move on to the next move, which is the tilt. So basically this is the same thing as the pan, but we're doing a vertical up or down motion. So to do this, we're going to set the gimbal into HL or horizontal lock mode. And then we're simply going to tilt it in the direction that you want to do the tilt. For example, you just want to tilt it up like so. Or if you want to do a tilt downwards, we just simply tilt the gimbal downwards. Of course, it's very important to do it nice and slowly and nice and smoothly. Now, one thing to bear in mind, exactly like the pan, is to make sure that at the end of the tilt, there is an object of interest. You don't want to just reveal the sky or anything like that. Make sure you're revealing, for example, in this footage here, we're going to reveal where the window used to be of an object of interest. Now, one thing also to be careful when doing a tilt is when you're going upwards, to watch the exposure on the sky, because very often you'll find with auto exposure on the GoPro, it's going to simply change the exposure as you get upwards and you start to face the sky. Of course, you can also do this tilt in reverse, and you can then just tilt down to an object of interest. Now the very next move is called the push forward. Now you can do this in two different ways. You can do it stationary, or you can do it physically by walking forward. So first of all, if you do it stationary, then hold two hands on your gimbal and simply push the gimbal forward like so. If you do it by physically moving, then make sure you know where you're going. It's nice and steady. And I also suggest you do the ninja walk, which you can do by bending your knees, because it's going to minimize the up-down motion as you move forward. If you do this move, you're going to, particularly if you move towards a building, it's going to look very nice and dramatic as you come up to it, and you reveal like the height of the building. For example, in this footage here, where I'm actually going towards the Abbey, I think it looks nice and cinematic, and I hope you agree by that. Alright, so what mode to put your gimbal in when you're doing this push forward is my favourite mode, which is gimbal lock mode. And once again, you can do that by holding in the trigger button on your gimbal until the 4 lights come on, and then when you do that, you can just simply push forward like so. And that's going to prevent your camera or your gimbal from moving in any of the axes. It's going to keep it nice and level and in the direction that you'll want to actually show the motion, which is towards the building or the mountain or whatever it is you are revealing. The second mode you can do if you don't want to use the gimbal lock, because it can become quite tiring, is once again the PF mode. And the PF mode is actually going to prevent the gimbal from moving up or moving down, and you want to do that because you want to keep the actual camera moving on a level plane. It's less likely you're going to move it left or right if you are moving forward. Okay, so that's the push forward move, and the other one is called pull back, and that's basically the same thing as push forward, except we are of course doing it in reverse. So once again, you can start off in your position here in the front, hold down gimbal lock or PF mode, and simply bring the gimbal back like that to actually reveal the scene. Now once again, you can do that physically by moving backwards, or you can do it stationary. If you do it by walking backwards, then please obviously make sure you know where you're going at the background and watch your step as you're moving backwards. No accidents please on my watch. Now once again, this move, the pullback, is one of my favourites. It's particularly if you do it quite quickly, because you can actually reveal the scene as the camera goes back, as in this 2 example footage here. I think it looks really nice. Now on both of these moves, on the push forward and the pullback, the additional thing you can do is you can actually tilt the camera, first of all, in an upright position like so. You can pull back by revealing the scene like so, especially if you've got a very tall building like a cathedral or an abbey or something like that, or a mountain. It looks absolutely fantastic. Or if you actually push forward, like in this example footage here, you can reveal the details of a nice old ceiling or archways or something like that. That also looks nice, especially like if, for example, in a city, if you've got like street lamps and all that sort of good stuff, or tall buildings. Once again, it also looks really, really nice. Okay, so that is my 7 basic cinematic moves that you can do with your Inky Falcon Plus gimbal plus your GoPro action camera. I hope you enjoyed this video guys and you found it useful. If you have, I'd appreciate if you could like the video, and also let me know in the comments whether you want me to do a part 2 or a continuation of this video for more advanced moves. And we're going to do that by taking the basic moves that we've learned in this video, and we're going to actually build upon them like building bricks to make more sophisticated moves with your gimbal. So once again, subscribe to the video if you're interested in that and you want to know when the video comes out. Okay, take care and see you soon.